Unveiled Heroes, the incredible journey of the Tuskegee Airmen and their life-changing legacy. In the small town of Millwood, Georgia, the sun hung low like a golden promise, casting long shadows across weathered sidewalks where children played and dreams were whispered under the shade of ancient oak trees. It was 1946, and Marcus Johnson stood on the edge of that very street, heart racing as he envisioned himself in a pilot's uniform, soaring high above the clouds, boundless and free. His grandfather, a proud Tuskegee Airman, had fought through storms of prejudice and hate to serve his country. He was not just a soldier, he was a pioneer, a symbol of resilience. Every story Marcus heard felt like a call to adventure. He wanted to carry that legacy, to lift himself and his community into the light. But living in Millwood wasn't easy. The world around him still bore the scars of war, and racial tensions twisted tightly around dreams like a heavy fog. "Dreams are risky, Marcus," his mother would say, her voice heavy with caution and love. Tears glimmered in her eyes as she recalled the hardships that rained down on their family. "The world can be cruel." With her words nudging at his ambition, Marcus was torn. He longed to chase the skies but felt the heavy hand of tradition shackle him to the ground. Every flicker of hope felt like it could be snuffed out, especially after the tragedy that struck one summer evening. News spread like wildfire when a beloved neighbor fell victim to hate-fueled violence. The townsfolk's grief was palpable, and uncertainty wrapped around them like a cold wind. Yet, amid the sorrow, there was solidarity, a shared determination to rise. Along with other passionate dreamers in the community, Marcus joined the local aviation club, seeking to uphold the legacy of his grandfather. He met veterans who had shared the skies with his grandfather, their faces crinkled with stories of both heroism and heartbreak. They inspired him, their flame flickering brightly even against the shadows of prejudice and politics. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as hope began to settle in his heart, whispers of a scandal spread through Millwood, tainting the air. Powerful figures who had long ignored the struggles of veterans were under scrutiny, and anger bubbled in the community. Marcus felt the fire within him ignite once more. This was his moment, a chance to draw attention to the heroes forgotten, to bring justice to the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. And then, revealingly, a secret surfaced about his grandfather. Was the man Marcus idolized more imperfect than he had imagined? The world spun around him as he grappled with the truth. Could he honor a legacy so loaded with contradictions, or would he end up tarnishing it? As Marcus prepared himself to face the questions that hung heavily in the air, the town watched, quiet breaths held tightly, praying for an answer that would shape them all. The spirit of heroism clashed with the weight of reality. Would Marcus fly, or would he crash? The answer lingered just beyond reach, shrouded in possibility. Marcus stood at the crossroads of his life, the warmth of the setting sun fighting against the chill of uncertainty that gripped his heart. The townsfolk around him moved like shadows, their murmurs swirling in the air, filled with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. As the news of his grandfather's hidden past seeped into the cracks of Millwood, it spread quicker than wildfire. There was a weight to it, heavy and inconsolable. Had the man he idolized faltered in ways Marcus was just beginning to understand? With every glance exchanged among the community, he felt their hopes resting on his shoulders. What did it mean to be a hero? He was not just wrestling with his grandfather's legacy but taking on a responsibility to clarify it for all who had gathered, those who found strength in a shared past. And this truth, however complex, could unite or fracture them. Determined, he made his way to the center of town, where a crowd had begun to form, a mix of old friends, fellow aviators, and curious neighbors. The rough asphalt felt cool beneath his feet. He could almost hear the whispers of the airmen echoing in his mind, their brave words fueling his resolve. No matter the weight of history, he would speak. "Friends," he called out, voice trembling but steady. "I need your ears and your hearts. We stand here today not just for memories, but to honor the truth. My grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, and he wore that title with courage. But like any man, he was flawed." Gasps rippled through the people, their faces reflecting confusion. But Marcus pressed on. His battles were not just in the sky, they were often right here at home, at times misguided. But don't let the shadows of the past distort the light he brought. He fought for us. He fought for a dream that he realized, was complex, layered with sacrifice as well as disappointment. If the community had come together to rise against prejudice, then they could face this revelation together, too. A voice piped up from the crowd, a veteran who had flown alongside Marcus's grandfather. "You speak boldly, young man. We all know the truth isn't easy to bear, but it's necessary. Your grandfather didn't just fight the enemy. He fought for a chance to be seen." Encouraged by the sentiment, Marcus nodded. Exactly. He didn't let hard truths extinguish his spirit. Instead, they ignited his fight. The townsfolk began to nod, murmurs transforming into words of agreement. For Marcus, hope began to flicker amidst the shadows, igniting a new energy. But as night drew closer, a deeper question surfaced in his mind. Was the community ready to confront their history alongside him? Could they take those flawed narratives and transform them into lessons of perseverance rather than reasons to divide? Marcus looked around, searching for understanding. But he couldn't ignore the faint echoes of doubt that still rippled through the crowd. What if they rejected his call, preferring the comfort of silence to the clarity of truth? He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his grandfather's spirit guiding him. "Let us forge a new beginning," he implored. "Let us honor the full story of those who served brilliantly and imperfectly. Together, we can write a future that shines as bright as our dreams." Cheers erupted from the gathering, drowning out the darkness. Yet, as the night deepened, the question still loomed. Was he forging a path toward unity, or would lingering doubts threaten to tear them apart once more? As he stepped back from the crowd, Marcus knew he would soon find out. The real journey was just beginning. The evening air was thick with emotion, the cheers echoing like a distant promise. Marcus stepped back, his heart racing, but he could sense the tension weaving through the fabric of the crowd. He caught sight of his mother, her eyes sparkling yet worried, standing stiffly at the edge of the gathering. She had always been the rock in their family, but today, the ground beneath them felt unsteady. "Where do we go from here?" A voice called from the back, cutting through the excitement like a knife. It was Harold, the town's unofficial historian and a man steeped in the old ways of thinking. "Revisiting these truths, it's risky, not just for us, but for the legacy of your grandfather, Marcus." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Marcus felt the weight of their concern. He recognized that fear. Yet, as he met Harold's gaze, he knew he had to respond. "Harold, the risks of silence are greater than the truths we speak. We can honor our legacy by embracing all of it, the good, the bad, and everything in between." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, silence reigned. Then, one by one, people began to nod, moving from doubt to cautious hope. It was a small shift, but it felt monumental, like shifting the very foundations upon which their town had been built. Just as the tension began to ease, a figure emerged from the fringes. It was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had known his grandfather since they were kids. Marcus had always viewed her as a grandmother of sorts, and her presence struck him like a jolt. "Marcus," she said, her voice tremulous but penetrating the crowd like a spear. "We've lived with the stories of these men." But remember, her gaze softened as she looked at everyone gathered. "Each story has another side. It is our duty to ensure we approach them with care and understanding." Marcus felt a swell of gratitude for her words. They were a reminder that while they were embarking on a path fraught with complexities, they were not alone. "You're right, Mrs. Thompson. A deeper understanding requires love and respect for the past. We need each other now more than ever." The crowd began to talk among themselves, voices rising and falling like waves. Can we really do this? Someone whispered. But what if we uncover something terrible? Another replied, a hint of fear creeping into their voice. Marcus sensed the old fears creeping back in, shadows lurking just beneath the surface. We cannot fear the truth. What was hidden only limits us. We have to believe that facing our past will empower us and help us grow. As he spoke, the energy shifted again. Small groups formed within the crowd, people leaning toward one another. Conversations sparked. Ideas ignited. This was the beginning of a new dialogue. But just as he began to feel the momentum building, a sharp voice sliced through the warmth of the moment. What makes you think we want to hear this? It came from Lisa, the teacher from the local high school. You're asking us to rethink everything we've been told. How can we trust this new narrative? His throat tightened. She was right, change comes with uncertainty. But in this moment, he understood it was that very discomfort that could lead them toward progress. Because truth is powerful, Lisa. And together, we can ensure that our new understanding honors everyone involved, including those whose voices were silenced. The crowd grew silent again, contemplating the weight of his words. Marcus held his breath, hoping to find the strength in them again. As the sky deepened to indigo, the flicker of stars appeared above, illuminating their crossroads. We stand at a moment of choice, he said, the determination in his voice unwavering. Do we hold on to the stories that comfort us, or do we dare to explore the ones that may hurt us? The challenge hung in the air, a palpable tension filled with possibility. As the crowd began to respond in hushed tones, Marcus felt hope tinged with anxiety. Would they truly embrace the hard truths, or would they cling to what felt safe? Would they choose clarity over comfort? Unnoticed, a figure lingered, in the shadows, watching with intent. This was only the beginning. As the crowd began to murmur again, the air felt charged with hidden possibilities. Marcus could see sparks of realization flaring in the eyes of those around him. They were on the edge of something transformative, a stirring that felt like history finally starting to breathe again. Suddenly, a young woman stepped forward, her posture bold yet uncertain. It was Kendra, Marcus's childhood friend. What if we actually listened to the stories that weren't told? What if we opened a door to dialogue instead of closing it with fear? Her passion animated the crowd, sparking curious glances. Exactly, Marcus replied, his heart racing. Let us gather the stories that make us uncomfortable. Those tales that have been forgotten for too long. He felt the tremor of excitement run through him. Could this be the moment when they moved from mere words to action? Kendra took a breath, her voice rising above the others. We should create a community project. Gather oral histories, document them. Let us record interviews with the descendants of the Tuskegee Airmen and others who have been overlooked. It's time their stories gained the recognition they deserve. Cheers erupted among the young people, but a wave of skepticism rippled through the older members of the crowd. Harold furrowed his brow. And what if those stories contradict the cherished narratives? What if they threaten the very identity we've built around our town? Marcus took a step closer to him. That's precisely why we need to do this, Harold. Understanding the full spectrum of our past helps us build a more inclusive future. Clinging to only the stories that make us comfortable will suffocate our growth. For a moment, Harold looked taken aback. It was rare to see him caught off guard. Yet, in that flicker of uncertainty, Marcus sensed a crack in the older man's armor. You're asking hard questions, boy, Harold said thoughtfully, his voice softer. You might just uncover truths that will shatter the legacy we've built. Maybe that's exactly what we need, Marcus said, his voice growing steadier. We can't let fear shadow our history any longer. This is about more than just the past. It's about healing and unity in our community. His eyes scanned the crowd, falling upon his mother who had been silent until now. She finally stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. Your father always believed the truth could set us free, she said, drawing gasps from the audience. But it requires courage to confront it. We can't just explore the good without facing the painful. Encouraged by their mother's support, the crowd began to buzz with life again. Ideas flew back and forth, a tapestry of possibilities weaving among them. Felt like they were on the verge of something huge. "You know what we should do?" Kendra proposed, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "We could hold a town hall meeting, invite everyone, and launch this project together. Let us make it a celebration of stories." The atmosphere lightened, and laughter broke out. The thought of combining their histories into a lively event resonated joyfully, stirring an infectious enthusiasm among the townsfolk. Marcus grinned, fueled by the energy around him. "Yes, let us bring everyone together. Embrace our history not just to remember but to learn and grow from it." As plans began to form, a flicker of doubt crept into Marcus's mind. Would they actually follow through? He couldn't shake the feeling that unearthing these truths would lead to conflict, inevitable rifts among cherished friendships. Yet in that moment, a deeper resolve took hold. He believed in the power of these stories and the change they could ignite. As dusk settled and the stars twinkled like promises in the night sky, he felt hopeful. This was just the beginning of their journey. Yet amidst the excitement, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was still watching from the shadows. Would they be ready for what lay ahead? The town hall meeting was set for next week, and the anticipation in the air felt electric. Marcus, Kendra, and their group of friends met every day after school at the community center, brainstorming how to make the gathering memorable. They decorated the hall with colorful posters, glittering stars, and strings of lights. They wanted every face in the town to feel invited, to feel that this moment mattered. Marcus's mom worked alongside them, pulling out old family photo albums filled with snapshots of the town. "These images tell stories too," she said, pointing at a faded picture of her and Marcus's dad at a parade. "Every smile, every moment carries a piece of history. We want to showcase what connects us, not just in pain but in joy." As she spoke, Marcus felt a swell of pride for the project. But a shadow of uncertainty flickered in the back of his mind. Would everyone really be willing to share their stories? What if the reactions were divided, voices raised in anger instead of understanding? Kendra, ever the optimist, nudged him. "Hey, remember what we talked about? This is a chance for healing. The truth can hurt, but it's also the first step to rebuilding trust." Marcus nodded, her faith infectious. News of the event spread through social media, and the buzz escalated. He could already hear snippets of conversation drifting through the halls at school. "Did you hear about the town hall? They're really going to shine a light on the untold stories." But as excitement built, so did the pressure. The night of the gathering finally arrived. The community center buzzed with energy, bright lights illuminating eager faces. Local businesses had pitched in, providing snacks and drinks, making it a true community affair. When Marcus stepped onto the small stage, he glanced at the sea of familiar faces before him. His heart raced. "Welcome, everyone," he began, his voice steadying with each word. "Thank you for coming out tonight to celebrate our stories. They are our legacies, and it's time we share them." The crowd cheered. They were ready to listen. But there was Harold, standing off to one side, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Harold represented the many who were still hesitant as stories began to unfold. Voices filled the room, some trembling, some confident. The audience listened, captivated by tales of courage, love, and hardship. Kendra took the microphone next, sharing her grandmother's experiences as a nurse during the war. The room fell silent, the air heavy with the weight of memories and the tears of those recalling pain yet finding strength. Yet as the night wore on, a sense of urgency began to seep in. Each new story, while revealing, also drummed up the fear of how it could be received. An uneasy tension filled the space, as if the room itself held its breath. Suddenly, there was a commotion near the back of the room. A figure stepped forward, blocking the doorway. It was Mrs. Wright, the oldest member of the community, her voice trembling. "You've all forgotten," she exclaimed, catching their attention. "You cannot speak of history without acknowledging the sacrifices made by those among us. We are here too, and we deserve to be heard." Gasps filled the hall, and Marcus felt his heart pound as heads turned toward her. It felt like slipping through a crack in the narrative, a challenge to the evening's course. "What stories do you have for us, Mrs. Wright?" he asked, stepping off the stage, bridging the distance. In that moment, a knot tightened within him. Would her stories shatter everything they had begun to weave together? Everyone paused, unsure of what lay next. Would they embrace the discomfort or flee back into silence? As the room watched in anticipation, the weight of unspoken truths hung heavily in the air. Would this night end in unity or division? Mrs. Wright took a breath, the weight of the years resting heavily on her shoulders. Her frail form seemed to quiver with a mixture of fear and determination. "I've lived through many storms," she said, her voice breaking. "But the stories of our heroes, they are the ones we must pass down." The crowd shifted in their seats. It felt like they were leaning in closer, drawing strength from each other. "You see, I was a young girl during the war. The world was in chaos. Yet there were men like the Tuskegee Airmen, fighting battles both in the sky and on the ground." Her eyes shone with the memories of a time that shaped her, each word a brushstroke painting a vivid narrative. Marcus felt the air shift. All the murmurs of uncertainty around him faded. Each listener was now captured by history, transfixed by the emotions that curled around Mrs. Wright's words. As she began to recount tales of bravery and resilience, the weight of her voice was like thunder rolling across the room. "Those airmen were more than just pilots. They were our fathers, brothers, sons. They took to the skies, and they fought not just for their country but against the prejudices they faced. I remember the pride in my father's eyes when he told us about their missions. Despite the odds stacked against them, her voice wavered, but she pressed on." Kendra squeezed Marcus's hand, her own heart racing, moved by Mrs. Wright's courage. The sincerity was infectious. People around them began sharing knowing glances, whispers of encouragement settling into nods of understanding. Then Mrs. Wright turned her gaze towards Harold, her earnest eyes inviting him into the fold of history. "Harold, do you remember your grandfather?" she called out, her voice steady, bridging the chasm of discomfort that had hung between them. "He was a part of that legacy too, wasn't he?" For a moment, time paused as everyone held their breath. Harold uncrossed his arms, visibly struggling to collect his thoughts. His past was slowly inching its way to the forefront. "Yeah, he was a mechanic for them," he finally said, his voice softer, revealing a vulnerability rarely seen. "He didn't talk much about it, but I knew he was proud. That pride deserves to be honored," Mrs. Wright said gently, coaxing him from the shadows of silence. The truth of their shared histories began weaving a bridge of connection across the room, breaking the icy barrier that had kept the community divided, as Mrs. Wright continued. Her stories unfolded like a banner unfurling in the wind, igniting sparks of recognition in the audience. The tales weren't just about war. They were about love, sacrifice, and resilience that endured beyond conflicts. Each story was a shard of glass reflecting a time when humanity triumphed over hatred. Tears glistened in the eyes of elders as they remembered their own stories, and younger folks leaned forward, genuinely eager to learn. Yet, as the emotion ran high, Marcus felt a pulse of apprehension creeping back. Would this moment of unity be fleeting? Was there a deeper history yet to be uncovered that might threaten this fragile connection? With a newfound sense of strength, he stepped closer to Mrs. Wright, emboldened by her spirit. "Let us open the floor," he suggested, his heart thumping wildly. "Who else wants to share?" As people began to rise from their seats, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were at the brink of something monumental or potentially catastrophic. Would the healing they craved withstand the weight of truths yet to emerge? A hush fell over the room as the first volunteer stood, a hesitant young woman named Jasmine. She had always watched from the sidelines, listening carefully to the echoes of history that shaped her family. Her voice trembled as she began. "My grandfather never wore a uniform, but he supported the airmen in his own way. He ran the local diner where they came for a hot meal and a kind word. He said they were heroes, men who broke barriers." The audience held onto her every word, their breaths synchronizing with hers. Jasmine swallowed hard, the weight of her family's untold stories pressing on her chest. He would tell me about how they couldn't always sit at the front. But they never let that stop them. They knew they were making history. A murmur of respect rippled through the crowd. The connection with the generations before them was palpable, and Marcus could feel the momentum building. Kendra leaned in closer, her eyes shimmering, inspired by Jasmine's courage. Just then, an older gentleman named Mr. Henderson stood up. Graying hair framed his face, deeply etched with lines that told stories of pride and pain. "I was young during those days," he said, his voice clear yet soft like the rustle of leaves. "I worked as a clerk at a small airport. I remember the airmen stepping off those planes, their faces filled with determination. They were fighting for us, for all of us, and we were fighting for them in our own ways. Can you believe it?" He continued. "People let ignorance cloud their judgment, but they couldn't see the heart that flew through the skies. My brother was a pilot, hopelessly in love with both flying and the mission. I never got to see him in action, but his courage lit a spark in my own life." A silent weight settled over the audience, heavy with both grief and admiration. Marcus felt a surge of emotion, igniting hope that perhaps healing could emerge from these stories shared. There was something unifying about them, a stubborn resilience threading through the generations. The air crackled with enthusiasm when another voice broke through the silence. It was Harold. He stood tall, a renewed light in his eyes. "I never thought much of my grandfather's past. I just knew he worked hard and didn't talk about the war, but hearing all of this, he must have carried so much pride. I want to learn more. I want to share his story." A ripple of agreement swept through the audience. Each person felt a hand on their shoulder, urging them to stand and share. One by one, they began to rise, voices trembling but resolute. They spoke of fathers, mothers, cousins, neighbors, people whose lives intersected with history in ways they never knew. Yet, in the midst of this collective unveiling, Marcus noticed Mrs. Wright clasping her hands tightly, a look of deep concern shadowing her features. It was clear that she sensed something brewing beneath the surface, a tension that hadn't yet been voiced. "What is it?" Kendra whispered to Marcus, her eyes locked onto Mrs. Wright, who had calmed the swelling crowd with a gentle wave of her hand, her experience evident in her poised demeanor. "Not every story heals," she said slowly, her voice steady. "Some carry burdens that are too heavy to lift. There are truths we must confront, histories we must face together. Sometimes the past can feel like a storm approaching, and we're not always prepared for the rain." The uncertainty in her words hung like a cloud over the room, casting a shadow on the connections being forged. Marcus could barely breathe. What was in the air? What secrets lay hidden, threatening the fragile bonds being built? As Mrs. Wright prepared to share again, everyone leaned in closer, a collective heartbeat resonating with anticipation. What revelations awaited within the storm she spoke of? Would they be ready to face it together? Mrs. Wright took a deep breath, and the silence deepened around her. Her gaze swept the audience, making connections as she searched for the right words. "This isn't just about our loved ones who wore uniforms or did their part during the war," she began, her voice steady but unyielding. "It's about the struggles they faced and the sacrifices made behind closed doors." The audience leaned in, the anticipation palpable. A few exchanged uneasy glances. Sensing more than just a continuation of stories, they sensed the unraveling of something deeper. "I grew up in a different time," Mrs. Wright continued, her gaze now distant, as if she were looking back through the years. "My father was an airman, but my mother, she bore the brunt of the prejudice, the struggles of raising children while her husband fought for a country that didn't always accept him." As she spoke, Marcus could see the spark of anger and pain ignite in Mrs. Wright's eyes. "I remember how hard it was for her to find work, how many doors slammed in her face simply because of the color of her skin. While my father flew high in the skies, she fought a battle right here at home, silently." The crowd was hanging on to every detail. The contrast of flying above the clouds while facing storms below struck chords of empathy. An older woman in the front, tears welling in her eyes, ached to understand this heavy legacy. "She didn't just raise us," Mrs. Wright said, her voice shaking slightly. "She taught us to stand tall, to speak up. She taught us that while the world can be unforgiving, love and courage can bloom from even the harshest soil. A murmur swept through the audience, many making connections to their own families, their own struggles. The atmosphere shifted, as the weight of fear gave way to a gathering strength. Each face reflected both sorrow and a renewed resolve. There were words unsaid, too, Mrs. Wright continued, her gaze penetrating. Words that held pain, triumph, and horror alike. Stories of friends lost, friends betrayed sometimes by those who were supposed to stand by their side. But we must hear them, or else they remain shadows in the past, leaving our wounds unhealed. Marcus felt the tension in the air again. He could see Kendra biting her lip, ready to burst with questions. Harold, who had only recently found new purpose in understanding his grandfather, seemed lost in thought. The stakes had suddenly risen. As Mrs. Wright concluded her thoughts, the room felt charged with a mixture of fear and excitement. These stories, they're not just pages in a history book, she urged, her voice rising with determination. They are the heartbeats of our families, the threads of our community. It's time to shine a light on the truths even the strongest soldiers never dared to voice. The impact of her words rippled through the gathered crowd, as they wrestled with the emotions spilling forth. Healing wasn't merely a shared sense of pride. It also demanded confrontation, remembrance, and understanding of the darker truths woven through their shared histories. As the applause echoed through the room, an unexpected voice rang out from the back. A young man with a nervous disposition managed to rise, his eyes wide. What if those stories, the ones we think we know, are not what they seem? What if there are even darker secrets hidden in our past? Gasps filled the room as the weight of his question hung unresolved. A new storm brewing on the horizon. What secrets were yet to be unveiled? The room was thick with uncertainty. Eyes darted around, caught between the young man's question and Mrs. Wright's heartfelt reflections. The air seemed to thrum, electrically charged with anticipation. Every soul present acutely aware that something crucial was about to unfold. Mrs. Wright clenched her fists, the trembling in her voice now fading. "That's the thing," she responded, her gaze steadying on the young man. "Too often we only get half the story. The past is a jigsaw puzzle, and only by putting the pieces together can we truly see the whole picture." "What do you mean?" Kendra leaned forward, her brow furrowed with curiosity. What kind of secrets could there be? Marcus had his own questions. He thought of his grandfather, a man of few words but who wore his pride like armor. Had he hidden darker truths too? Secrets that could tear down the walls built around his memories. Mrs. Wright took a moment, her eyes softening as she recognized their collective yearning for understanding. Some stories were buried so deep that even we, the children of those who fought, don't know them. Think about it. The camaraderie, the bravery shown in the sky, yes. But what of the struggles between those who stood shoulder to shoulder? Not all battles were fought far from home. Some were right in our communities. Some were in our hearts. A buzz of murmurs rippled through the audience, voices thick with emotions ranging from doubt to determination. The older woman from before shifted in her seat, tears glistening on her cheeks while she looked at her own memories basking in an invisible warmth. A deep silence followed, heavy with the weight of unsaid stories. Then, seated close to the front, Harold raised his hand timidly. "My grandfather never talked about his time in the war, but I've been piecing things together. There were whispers about things that happened to the airmen, things they were forced to endure." "What do you mean?" Kendra's voice broke the quiet again. "Racism, for one," Harold continued, his voice gaining strength. "They were heroes in the air, but on the ground, there were people who saw them as less. I'd heard of airmen coming home, still scarred from not just enemy fire but from their own countrymen. No one talks about what it felt like, the betrayal." Mrs. Wright nodded, the fire in her heart reigniting. "Exactly. The valor of those who flew is marred by the shadows of the lives they lived outside their uniforms. They wanted to fight for justice, but sometimes justice was denied to them. Our stories are tangled up in layers of trauma." Her words lingered in the air, and now a different kind of energy crackled through the audience. They weren't here solely to honor the past anymore. They were being drawn into a quest for truth. What if we could uncover those secrets together? Marcus stood up, the idea tumbling out before he could stop it. What if we started asking the questions that no one else will? We could turn those shadows into light. Kendra's eyes lit up at his suggestion. We need to hold space for these stories. Could be cathartic for everyone, letting the past breathe again. What if this was our chance to heal? The audience exchanged glances, the fire of potential possibility igniting among them. Mrs. Wright's steely gaze held the room captive. It's not just about the soldiers anymore. It's about all of us understanding how courage can come wrapped in painful packages. Are you all willing to join me on this journey? As the crowd erupted into blessings and pledges of support, a sense of unity began to form. But just as quickly as the hope rose, a whisper of doubt floated in the air. Was everyone ready for the truths that lurked in the shadows? A shadow passed across Marcus's face, the weight of his own questions loomed, unanswered. What truths might they find beneath the stories waiting to be unearthed? As laughter and promises filled the room, fear intertwined with excitement, leaving Marcus with an unsettling thought. Sometimes confronting the darkness is the only way to find the light. But what would happen when they finally pulled back the curtains? Would they be ready for whatever lay on the other side? The day had arrived, the sun glimmering over Millwood, casting a warm light on the community center bustling with energy. It was the town hall meeting, a day Marcus had envisioned as a bridge between the past and a hopeful future. But it was also a day filled with tension, uncertainties whispered in the corners, and stories hung heavy in the air, waiting to surface. Inside, clusters of people chatted, some nervous, others eager. Marcus stood backstage, glancing at the crowd through the curtains, heart pounding. Kendra appeared beside him, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Today's the day, Marcus. We've prepared for this. Let us turn the page together. He nodded, his resolve building, but fear lurked. What if the stories they unearthed divided them instead of uniting? There was a history filled with complexities, and every person in that room carried their piece of it. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. Marcus took a deep breath as he stepped onto the stage. Let us honor all the voices, every heartbeat that has fought for justice, both in the air and on the ground. The room went quiet, the anticipation palpable. Together, we aim to explore our past, not just the history of the Tuskegee Airmen, but all the untold stories that have shaped us. He paused, looking into every face, willing them to believe. Today is not just about remembering. It's about understanding and healing. As the crowd cheered, he felt a surge of hope shoot through him. Kendra minimized the space behind him, urging their friends to join him. We need to hear from every generation, she announced, waving a piece of paper that had lists of names, stories yet to be told. One by one, they came forward, sharing voices of pride, sorrow, resilience, and love. There were tales of pilots defying odds, women tending to homes while their husbands flew high, families struggling against unyielding barriers, and children witnessing the heroes who fought not just on distant shores, but within their very communities. Each story echoed, a heartbeat that pulsed through the audience, connecting them in ways they hadn't anticipated. Then came Mrs. Wright, her presence commanding. As she spoke, she flourished tales of her upbringing, her father's sacrifices woven with deep, hidden struggles. The audience listened intently, their collective empathy igniting with each syllable. The pain and pride reside together, she said. What mustn't be forgotten is what that toxicity can do to our hearts. Just when the momentum was building, a young voice piped up from the back. It was Jasmine, her face alight with determination. But what about the stories that hurt? Are we ready to hear them? Marcus felt the room pause, every heartbeat synchronized in question. The honesty in Jasmine's inquiry cut through the air, like a knife through silence. What about those stories? Would they dare to confront the darkness? Yes, Marcus responded, feeling the tide shift. It's time we embrace those too, the experiences that stain our legacy. The only way to heal is to face the scars. Harold stepped forward, his initial hesitance vanished. We're scared sometimes. We buried truths to keep our pride intact. But we cannot move forward if we don't face the shadows that linger. Cheers erupted, voices rising in agreement. An unmistakable shift in the room. This journey was bigger than individual stories. It became about family legacies intertwining in the tapestry of their community. As Marcus looked around, he saw individuals who once stood apart now standing together, resilience sparking in their eyes. The dialogue was deepening, but not all was perfect. Doubt still lived in corners, yet there was a growing willingness to listen. The meeting continued with stories rising like the sun. Kendra nervously shared her grandmother's accounts of struggle, but also her mighty spirit, painting the room with laughter and tears. Every voice mattered. Every tale broke deeper barriers. And just as Kendra finished, the crowd buzzed with excitement. The community was coalescing, holding on to vulnerability, courage, and grace. Then, the unthinkable happened. A significant voice from the shadows emerged. John, a local favorite known for his loud proclamations of the town's greatness. You talk a lot about pain and pride, but what about the ones who got left behind? Those of us who didn't fit the narrative? Were we heroes too? A hush fell over the room. The gravity of his question brought uncertainty, yet it also sparked a crack in the facade. Marcus's heart raced. This was the test. Would they embrace the complexity of their stories or cower back into safety? Every voice deserves to be heard, even those that conflict with ours, Marcus declared. This is how we grow. We can't rewrite history alone. We do it together, listeners and storytellers alike. Gradually, recognition dawned on the crowd, and he felt a wave of hope wash over him. As the echoes of the meeting began to fade, Marcus realized they had uncovered something beautiful, a community yearning for understanding. They were ready to face their flaws, to accept each other not just as history, but as living stories filled with light and shadow. Stepping off the stage, he embraced Kendra, his heart full. We did it. But deep inside, he understood this was merely the beginning. They had opened the doors to exploration, but twilight was still lingering. They would need to gather strength for the journey ahead. It was a commitment, one that would shape their town, their families, their future. And in that moment, standing together, they felt the palpable promise that the light of truth would guide them through, revealing a legacy brighter than any shadow. As they exited, the golden dawn greeted them, the world alive with possibilities. They had taken their first steps in witnessing the beauty and complexity of their shared past. And Marcus had never felt prouder to be a part of this journey. Now, every heart in Millwood soared together, as they understood the transformation of their shared legacy had just begun. Now is the moment to show your support. If you enjoyed this emotional conclusion, you need to subscribe now to our channel for more exclusive stories that lift you up and inspire change. Drop a like immediately to feed the algorithm and help us reach others who need to experience this transformation. And don't wait not even one more second. Comment below about your feelings regarding this heartwarming ending. Your feedback truly matters. Finally, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see how embracing the truth can illuminate our lives. Together we can keep this journey alive.